I started like as a kid, still going to middle and high school. For a solid year, I was just working my ass off in over 100-degree summers or, negative freezing winters and just totally exposed to the elements.
Jack, a seasoned construction entrepreneur who shares his journey from working under his father-in-law to establishing his own successful construction company.
When you're on a framing crew, you really see how houses are assembled, put together, and you can kind of visualize like what's behind the sheetrock once you've done that for a while. My father-in-law taught me how to do doors, and I was like, okay, so I can make X amount of dollars framing, working my ass off in the elements, or I can make, quadruple that doing doors and not exposed to the weather.
All right. Well, Jack, thanks for joining today. I'm excited to have a familiar face on my first show where we talk about helping construction owners get started and grow their construction business. Looking forward to hearing a little bit more about your story because Jack's Construction started before I got involved. Can I ask you first, where did the idea come from and why did you start Jack's Construction?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Darren. It started because I was working for my father-in-law and he taught me a really cool niche with installing residential doors, and I saw there was opportunity for me to start my own company, and so I did. And it was at a good time. Here in Seattle, the building industry's been booming for, 10 years now, pretty much. We had the recession in '08, and then once it picked back up, it hasn't really slowed down. So there is a ton of opportunity in the industry. And so I saw that and I went for it. And I'm really glad I did because I've been busy and it was a good move for sure.
You saw success basically right out of the gate, right? It's been 8 years, 2016, 2017.
Yeah, I started at the end of 2016, November 2016. I got my license and all that. And it always slows down around the holidays just because people are busy and, it's cold and the weather isn't great. So it slows down a little bit, but I've never worried about, is this sustainable? Is this going to be successful? It's always been like a guaranteed great way to make a living.
And were you always in windows and doors? You said, you kind of started in that niche, but you had background in construction framing first. I remember
exactly. So I started like as a kid in, still going to middle and high school. I had one of my dad's friends was a contractor, so he'd put me to work, but I would never, it wasn't anything skilled. And then I went to Idaho. I have some family over there, and I got on a framing crew. And so for a solid year, I was just working my ass off in over 100-degree summers or, negative freezing winters and just totally exposed to the elements. But when you're on a framing crew, you really see how houses are assembled, put together, and you can kind of visualize like what's behind the sheetrock once you've done that for a while. So that really helped me to kind of understand residential framing and carpentry. And so that's what really I felt like gave me the knowledge in the field. And then, like I said, my father-in-law taught me how to do doors, and I was like, okay, so I can make, X amount of dollars framing, working my ass off in the elements, or I can make, quadruple that doing doors and, not exposed to the weather. It was a no-brainer to specialize.
Seriously. Right.
Yeah. And I think Honestly, I think that a lot of I think specializing in something in the trades is a great way to go because doors, windows, bathrooms, toilets, like there's always going to be work wherever you are in whatever field you're in the trades, and if you can
Hmm.
specialize, then you can kind of advertise yourself as the expert of whatever field you're in. And so, like doors, for example, I do like to think of myself as an expert. And doors are also something that a lot of carpenters who are in other fields try to install a door, and but it's just not something they do every day, so there's always issues. So
I
we
can tell
actually have,
firsthand that I tried to fix the hinges on my mother-in-law's door the other day, and it
yeah.
doesn't go so well.
Yeah, no, it's just not something you're familiar with,
Yeah.
and so I think that specializing in a niche is a good way to go.
Yeah. So you are a general contractor and can do more than just window and door installation, but
Yeah, yeah, I
you,
found, with getting insurance and my license and everything, I found it was easier and more cost effective to just be licensed and bonded and insured as a general contractor, but then just do my doors. But then, if somebody needs something else done, I don't have to worry about whether my insurance is going to cover it, whether I'm even legally allowed to do it. The one thing that I am not insured for is to do any sort of roofing, because the insurance on that is super expensive. So for me, I just say, like, nope, I can't touch your roof. I don't do any roofing. And then it makes my insurance like a third of what it would cost if I did roofing.
that's interesting. Yeah. And I'm glad you kind of just went into like the licensing and bonding insurance route. Is that something that you have to renew every year? It's not something that I've generally helped you with other than the audit for the payroll side and the
Right. Yeah.
liability insurance each year.
So I went through that whole licensing and like, what do I want to be as a company? I went through all that like before I got your help, Darren, with my accounting and stuff. And yeah, at first I was like licensed as a general. I could do anything I wanted, but my insurance was really expensive. And then I updated it to like not do roofing, and that made it like that was the big thing. That made it affordable, and like no one ever asked me to do any roofing, and I don't want to go up on a roof anyway. Like I don't have a big ladder on me. I'm just a door installer. So I switched it up. I got my insurance dialed into what I was actually doing, and then uh, yeah, that was pretty much it. And then and then I got your help, and you helped me to get even more organized. And then we got my insurance was going up every year, even though I've never had a claim on my business insurance. And um, so then you helped me get with a different company, one that was more reasonable to work with. Because like if you don't have any claims, why is your rate going up? And all that was happening is I was making more money. So sure, there's technically more liability with that, but I don't know.
Right. More
Insurance,
projects.
you have to have insurance if you're in the trades, because you can, it's like driving without insurance. Like you just don't do that if
Yeah.
you're
You open
doing
yourself
things
up for so
right.
much exposure.
Yeah. Oh man. And there's just things in the building industry you can't control. Like I measured up to do some guy's interior doors out in Bellevue, and he just finished this big remodel, beautiful addition onto his house. And the first thing that was done was some plumber came in and, hooked up the water main into the house. And then 3 months later, after all the construction is done, that pipe had a leak.
E-
Yeah, yeah. And so everything has to be redone. All this stuff has to be torn out. And like, if you're the plumber, you have to pay for all that. If you're,
Yeah, that you're on
because
the hook for
your
it.
mistake costs the homeowner all this stuff. And so that's big money. And honestly, that plumber might have made very little money hooking up that one pipe, but if you have the right insurance, then you're covered for those things that happen. Also, in Seattle, we've had vans and trucks get broken into, all of our tools stolen multiple times. So you can have insurance that covers you for things like that.
Mhm.
Also, if you're driving onto a job site, you're supposed to have insurance like on your vehicle in the name of your business, because what happens if you hit something, you got to cover that, whatever needs to be fixed. So yeah, insurance is like, that is a daunting thing for tradespeople. At least it is for me, making sure that I'm covered for everything that I'm doing, but I'm also not being ripped off because it's not
Totally.
a service I've used yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where we can help, especially, it's a little bit on the insurance side, but on the payroll, the workers' comp insurance, which is run through Washington State, it's a
Yep.
mandatory insurance. Like you said, if you're specialized in a certain trade and you're covered for framing or roofing, and you're paying, that rate, which would be so much more than the rate for interior carpentry, for example.
Yeah.
You could be opening yourself up to just be paying more than you need to for on the payroll tax side as well. So yeah, a super important financial consideration for contractors just getting started is to consider what kind of insurance and liabilities they have. And if they can niche into a specific area that reduces that liability, that'll help reduce some costs for sure.
Yeah. And I think like licensing, I think for the most part, like a general's license, a plumber's license, an electrician's license, I don't think they vary that much. So that's why it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, just get a GC license and then you can do anything you want, Your
Mhm.
grandma can hit you up and say, "Hey, I need some help with this," and you can do it without having to worry like, "Oh, am I even allowed to do this?"
True. Yeah. So you're a general on your own project, right? On Woodby Island?
Uh, yeah, technically, I'm not much. I'm not a great general when it comes to like building a house, ground up. But
So an ancillary benefit that
like I was
you can
able,
run a project.
yeah, I was able to put my company name down like with the county for, like, oh, okay, they're building the house. So then that was just nice to not have to, involve a general contractor just to be able to like submit building plans.
Totally.
And then actually also being a general, I just thought of this. You then can buy from like wholesale places around town, like there's
Right.
some lumber and like tile and building places that'll only sell to, contractors. And so then you can always, get deals from them.
Yeah, and so great point. The reseller's permit that you apply for with your license, you can utilize that to get materials tax free. But a financial consideration would be that you can't be using them for your own business use or for your own personal use, right? The
Yeah.
idea of the reseller's permit is for you to be able to use something tax free and then charge tax to your end user, right? So that's only
Yeah.
being taxed once.
Yeah.
You're trying to reduce that double taxation on being taxed at the point when you purchase it, and then you're charging tax to your end user, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I used to think like, oh yeah, I don't have to pay taxes on stuff anymore, but no, once I understood like,
Yeah, your
no,
personal stuff is still
you then charge
taxable.
your customer and then you're giving the state their cut. But yeah, I mean, there you go. You can't get a reseller's permit without, a valid license.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's so that's something that we can help with as well is making sure that you're tracking sales tax and use tax appropriately. And if you had purchased material or equipment tax free, then you didn't actually end up selling that to a customer. We need to be tracking that so that you're reporting use tax on any items that potentially should have been taxable at the point of sale. and you need to report that, annually. But if if they come back and find that, oh, you haven't reported any use tax for the year, and they find that, oh, well, Jack was using his reseller permit for buying materials on his own, home or using personally, they can claw back, 3 years and open up a look back period. And then if they find that there was any negligence there, it can open up an even further look back period. So yeah, that's something that we really like to inform contractors with, is that, look, there is this added benefit of having a reseller's permit. Let's just make sure that you're using it appropriately for your clients.
Yeah, right. And honestly, having the accounting, like you keeping an eye on all that allows me to sleep at night, because before I had help tracking that yeah, fireworks, yes. That was always one of my biggest fears, was like, am I paying my taxes right? Am I doing all this legally? Or am I going to be, am I going to get a letter in the mail from the IRS one day that says, hey, we're going to open everything up. We're going to go back 6 years. You better have all your stuff. And that's always been my biggest fear as a contractor. So once I got your help with kind of tracking that stuff, and like, I mean, I can't even count how many times I've needed a W-9, a reseller's permit, or my proof of insurance, that you've always been able to kind of, give me within whatever 24 hours, so that I could provide that for my customers. Like, so helpful.
Super kind words. Yeah, thanks. I mean, having that organization in place, we created that initial binder for you just to track your insurance and licensing documents in. And that's been helpful for our team too, to be able to oh, Jack just needs this while he's out on the job site and needs to supply this for someone looking for a quote immediately. So
yeah, because the other thing, every year the city, the cities that I'm licensed to work in, they send me a piece of mail that says, hey, renew your license. And then I do. And then they send me this sweet little, like, hey, here's your license. Well done. Post it somewhere, that your customers can see. I don't have an office, like, I'm not carrying around these documents like, hey, check this out and check this out. So, and most customers, if they're, calling you up and having you come over to their house, they don't need to see that documentation. But 5 to 10% of the time, people want to see it. It's all public information. They could look it up and find it themselves.
True.
Most of the time they don't, and so it's great.
You gotta help them find it so that they trust, right?
Or, you just look like a hero when you're like, hey, don't even worry about it. Here it is,
Yeah.
So for me to be able to hit you up, you have that ready to go for me. It's like a smooth operation. And then I don't have to try to keep track of this little piece of paper that, like, I've got 1,000 pieces of paper in my van right now that are important to me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to find that paper when I need it.
Yeah, our whole goal is to make you look like a well-oiled machine, to help you focus on what you do best. We want you to be on the job site, where you like to be, or working with clients and helping estimate new projects, not sitting there, trying to find paperwork in your office. And that's something that we can help just streamline that organization and make sure that we're supplying anything you need on the back end.
I think that's what stops a lot of people from, rolling the dice and starting their own company, is that alone, is just the paperwork. And like, I don't know the word for it, but I kind of call it like the bureaucratic side of things, where you got to sign on the dotted line and you got to do everything right. And there's really no one there to like help make sure you're doing it right. There's only people there that are ready to like penalize you for making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So like, that's where you made it like just possible, because I can hang doors. I can do all the construction side of things. That doesn't faze me. That's what people are hiring me for. But in reality, what is going to affect me in a negative way that might make me unable to do my job every day is the bureaucratic, the paperwork side of things, because that's where I'll make a mistake, get hit with a penalty that might make it so that I can't sustainably run my business.
Definitely. Yeah. So just a little shout out for Jack's Construction. What are all the primary services that you provide? You know, I've seen exterior doors, interior doors. I've learned a bunch about storm doors, and
Yeah. Oh
you
man, you
can
never
name it.
knew there were so many doors, huh?
Yeah.
But
Right.
yeah, so Jack's Construction, our bread and butter is residential doors. So front door, back side, sliding glass door, double French door. If you got a door with some fixed side lights on the outside, I mean, if it's a door in your house, Jack's Construction can help you to replace it. Or we can help you to adjust it if it's giving you issues. We are just like the door professionals. And we
And
do.
you do more than just install. You can source the door and help supply that door
Yeah.
too, correct?
So, yeah, I work with Frank Lumber, the door store in Shoreline. They are a custom pre-hang door shop. So they can make you just about any door you need. And I work with them on a daily basis. I run 100 grand through them every year with ordering folks doors and whatnot. So I can help you in the ordering process. I can help you get your door painted. We install it. We provide a warranty on the install. And that's because doors are notorious for being not hard to deal with, but they can adjust
Varying
with the
sizes and
seasons. They
everything.
shrink, they expand. Your house is settling, so your door starts to act weird. It's hard for me to explain, but that's why we just provide the warranty. So then it's like, if you hire us, we're going to take care of you. No questions asked.
What's the general, if I needed a door today, I could, do you prefer email or just general hop on the phone, give you a call? And
I
then what does
love
that order process look like once,
Yeah,
once
so
we're working together?
if you need a door, you need to start with the installer because they're going to be the one that comes over. And let's say you already know you want to hire me. So you can call, text, or email me. But the best way to get a hold of me is to either call or text me. My favorite way is to just have a customer text me a photo of the door that they want to replace, because I can look at a photo and I know whether we're talking interior, exterior. A picture speaks 1,000 words. So a customer sends me a photo, I can give them an over the phone estimate for labor, sometimes even for materials. And then if that sounds, reasonable, is in the budget, then we'll set up a meeting. I'll come over, I'll measure the door, and then I will go to Frank's, provide an estimate for the new materials, the new door, maybe a new door handle, maybe new trim, all the details with the order. I'll provide an estimate. If the customer says, yep, that sounds good, I'll move forward with ordering the door. And then when I order the door, that's when I'll know like the lead time. So then we schedule the installation. And then I have a full-time employee that works for me. So 95% of the time it is him. His name's Ian, but he shows up to do the install. So he's kind of like the installation part of the company. And I'm really kind of the administrator at this point because there's a lot that goes into just ordering a door.
You're the facilitator, the estimator, and making sure that the orders go smoothly. And then, you've trained Ian with the process and, how your quality of service, I guess. And then, Ian's able to go and take care of that.
Yeah, Ian had his own company. Honestly, owning your own company in the trades, the employees that you want to find are ones that had their own company at one point. They gave it a shot, but most of the time it's, again, like I was saying earlier, like Ian had his own company. I think he was doing tile, concrete. He was doing all kinds of stuff. And he was doing fine work, but it was the paperwork side of things that got out of hand, and then something went wrong, and he got sued. And I think it was him and his brother that were running the company. Anyway, when I met Ian, he basically could run his own company. He just didn't want to. So
Hmm.
that's the type of employee you want to find, because they're responsible. They've been there before. They know what it's like to be the owner of the company. You know, it looks great from the outside, but
Right.
it's very stressful and time consuming. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, it
he.
sounds like you've got quite oh, sorry to cut you off there for a second, but I mean, I've
Oh, you're
seen
good.
a little bit of turnover with your company, and now that you've got a trusted employee that is higher caliber, it's worth
Yeah,
its weight in gold to pay a higher wage and trust that your quality of service is going to be, a lot higher
yeah,
than
exactly.
trying to churn in a lower cost employee.
Yeah, there's, man, in the trades, right? There's a lot of the like, oh, go to Home Depot and pick up some laborers, or hire your high school, or your friend's kid who's in high school or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it pays to have good employees. And like, I've always had my employees on the books. I've always had them, legit and all that. But there's a lot of also, under the table payment in the trades. And I think that it's just so much easier and less stressful to have good employees, pay them well, even give them health insurance if that's your thing, and, just having good quality work.
Yeah, so talking a bit about the difference between employees and contractors, you can hire a 1099 contractor to help you with your company, or you can hire employees. And often one of the best ways to attract and retain quality workmanship is to offer W-2 employment. Have you found that that's the case with Jack's Construction too?
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, so when you interview a general contractor who's actually like more of like a real general contractor building houses and stuff, they will probably have a lot more info on this question, because I don't think I've ever 1099'd anyone, because that's where you've got a general contractor, and then the general is like hiring a subcontractor,
Hmm.
right? And so like the subcontractor doesn't work for my company, so they don't get a W-2, they get a 1099, right? Am I
Right.
accurate on this?
No,
Okay.
yeah, you're absolutely
Okay.
right. And
So yeah, my employee Ian, I want him under my company. I just want to pay him an hourly rate. I want, if he makes a mistake, it's under Jack's Construction's insurance blanket. He doesn't need his own insurance. If he's
he's
getting a
covered, right?
1099, he's got his own license and all that, and his own insurance and
Right.
everything. So it's
And it
easy.
overcomplicates because then you have to also be responsible for the subcontractor's insurance
Right.
and liability as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I got to make sure they're all legit and all that. So for me, it's always been easier to just, yeah, W-2, and like have my employee on my books, under my insurance. Also, I've found that customers like, um, there's a lot of people that have a nightmare story of where they hire a company, and like, let's just say, well, I don't want to use my company. Like, let's say you hire John's Construction, and John comes over and measures your door, but then someone else shows up to do the installation. Customers hate that. They think that you are, like, you've taken the customer's money and you've just hired someone that's going to do it at half the price.
Hmm.
um, and like, a lot of people have a nightmare story of that for good reason. But that's not what we do. Like, Ian's been with me since before COVID. And like you said, I trained him, and he had his own company before that. So not only is Ian trusted, he's on my books. And I think that to a customer, that matters. Like, he works for me. He's not his own entity that I've now brought in here and involved. So
Right.
I think having him on Jack's Construction's payroll and under our insurance just makes customers, trust you more.
Yeah. And the proof is in the pudding, just seeing how Jack's Construction has grown 47% year over year with just two of you working. And that's incredible. It's the quality of workmanship is good. You're getting great referrals, and the clients appreciate the entire experience with Jack's Construction.
Yeah. And I mean, things aren't perfect. Things go wrong. And the other part of what I spend my time doing is putting the fires out, adjusting things, doing the warranty calls. Because Ian's working full time doing installs. No one's perfect. Things happen. Things need to be adjusted and played around with. So I do that part too. And then that also just gains the customer's trust more, because if a customer hires my company and my company does something, and we accept payment for the job, but then a week later something's not working right, sure, if I send my employee over there and he fixes it, great. But I think the customer just wants to see the company owner, get in there, see what's going on, fix it, but make sure there's nothing else that no one else can see, So, yeah, and just worth saying, I think customers want to see who the check is written out to, fixing the problem.
Yeah, getting your own hands dirty to rectify any issues, right?
Yeah.
So we chatted a little bit about compliance and trust, and that's been a significant help. I know that when we sit together for financial discussions, we really like to give visibility into the bigger picture and try to see all right, how can we actually poise Jack's Construction for sustainable growth? Not just trying to, pump 10 new employees into the business and then growing beyond your britches, but what can we do to discuss, your cost of goods sold and look at where's your revenue coming from? Is it labor? Is it materials? Are you pricing appropriately? Are you pricing yourself out of the market? Those are some things that we generally look at. But yeah, what has been the most valuable when we've, that sticks out in your mind when we've been able to have our meetings?
Well, I'll just use the last one we had as an example, right? Where, I'm not going to use exact numbers, but we noticed that the amount of money that I spent on materials and then the amount of money that I took from my customers reimbursing me for those materials, those were not, those numbers weren't very close. Remember, there was kind of some money missing. And, when we looked at the labor income and the profit over the year, it was okay, this looks like an accounting, or not an accounting, but a information input error on my part. And so, but it frustrated me. It was whoa, where is that money? That's a lot of money. We were talking about a few, in the tens of thousands of just where'd it go? And so not it disappeared, but it was kind of mixed in the numbers of the year, and that just frustrated me because I really wanted to see what was happening, where that was going. And so we sat down, that was the end of 2023. And ever since then, 2024's books, I know we're only 3 weeks into it, but they are clean. Every dollar spent on materials is tracked as materials sold. And then
that visibility is really important.
It's huge, because when you're looking at the books and you're well, okay, wait a minute, where did this money go? And all it takes is slowing down and just doing the bookkeeping right. It just made me frustrated at myself for not doing it better and just spending an extra 2 minutes being okay, yeah, this was materials, this was labor. And it kind of goes back to, again, I'm great at installing the door. I don't necessarily want to dig through receipts and input the stuff in the computer after I've worked a full day, but it counts, because then at the end of the year, there's not this like, what have I done? And then also, what if I did forget to charge a customer? And actually, this has happened before too, where I'll go through my receipts from the door store that I get all my doors at, and I'll find a receipt and I'll be like, well, hey, wait a minute. I didn't think I bought this door. I thought the customer paid for this door. And then I go into my QuickBooks and I look and I see there's no material cost on this invoice. Uh-oh. And then I call the customer up, and luckily I, typically work with understanding, nice people, and I just show them like, hey, I bought your door for you. Can you pay me back for it? Like, whoops, sorry. And so, yeah, that, going through the books, just keeping your books organized and accurate is so important. And doing it like on a weekly basis, like not trying to save it all for like a day at the end of the month to try to like go back and remember what you did at the beginning of the month. It's like, no, you have to invest that time in, and even if it means like having to not go to one of the meetings that potentially is a job, but cleaning up your books instead, it's worth it.
Right. I think we offer some packages that can be like holistic and do everything for you. With Jack, we're super flexible because we want to create something for you where you're entering and responsible for entering your own invoicing and also entering in your own receipts. You're snapping pictures of those too. And what that allows for us is actually you to have a more seamless look at your company and your performance. But it does create that headache that it's like, oh, maybe I baked in a little bit. The overall cost of the job exists in labor. But when I look at my profit and loss statement, I'm not seeing, material costs and material income reflected appropriately. And when we look at that, we just kind of have to say that, well, maybe that was just an issue with invoicing. And like you said, with receipts, if you can just bake in 15, 20 minutes at the beginning of your week or something or end of your week to snap photos, that will at least get your receipts into the software. And then we know that our bookkeeping team isn't going to let that linger. So that'll get tracked to the job or tracked to an expense account for us to then recapture. And if there's anything that hasn't been billed to the customer, it's flagged.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It is a service that I can't imagine, or I can imagine what it would be like. I know I would be losing thousands of dollars on missed material reimbursements from customers if I didn't have all that going on. And I like making my own invoices because it is like, it's the first step to keeping my company organized, because I'm the one on the job doing it, so yeah, like I said, it was just that learning curve of being like, and so what I would do, like for, let's say someone wanted a front door, but I bought the door for them, I would just go into QuickBooks and be like, hey, yeah, labor to replace front door. And then I would just add the labor and the materials into one. So it was just one line item.
Right.
Probably looked cleaner to the customer, but then in my books, the material is not tracked, and it looks like I made twice as much on the labor.
On labor, right?
Yeah. So I mean, like honestly, from an accounting side, you're probably like, but to me,
it's all about how you want to visualize the books, though.
Money, but then at the end of the year, it really is this. It wasn't a headache, but it was like, man, Jack, just clean it up. Get better.
Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily a mistake, but it is. Right. It's important for.
I knew what I was doing. I was just like cutting a corner, knowing that the accounting or bookkeeping would look weird, and at the time I didn't think I would care. But when you do that 30 times over the year, it adds up, and then it looks like a lot of money is where it shouldn't be, or feels like it's missing, when really you just got to be you got to be more than a construction guy, a carpenter.
Right.
You know, you got
Yeah.
to
And
get
what,
on the computer, put a little time in there. I mean, if
and
I
it,
was smart, I would snap every receipt right when I get it, but I just put it in a pile and do it later. You know, everyone's got their own system.
yeah, the system works as long as it's consistent, right? And you can hold yourself accountable to it.
And I've never like lost a pile of receipts. Knock on wood. I'll probably change that system once I potentially lose a big pile of receipts that then a bunch of expenses isn't trackable, you know?
Right.
I'll wait to learn that lesson.
So with the labor and materials conversation, in Washington, it's not necessarily an issue because both labor and materials are taxable on when you're performing services at someone's real property, right? So we have
Mhm.
to track that for sales tax, and having that sales tax conversation with other contractors out of Washington State, it could be a consideration that only labor or only materials is applicable for sales tax. So then it becomes that much more important to track it separately. Um,
Right. Yeah.
but
You
one
could
thing
be
that
in
we're
the
looking at when we're looking at your profit and loss statement is, okay, let's say Jack had, this is a great performance metric. You had 47% growth year over year. And if your materials are increasing by somewhere near 47% along with that, then if your income for materials on that line item is only increasing at 10%, then you're seeing like, oh, there's a disconnect. My material costs are increasing 40 something percent, but I'm only recouping 10% in growth in labor. So
right.
uh, either there's an error in the accounting and the invoicing side of things, or we need to readjust pricing to reflect a change in the cost of materials.
Yeah, it's really funny that you say that because I think I don't know, like 3 or 4 times a year, we always sit down and kind of like go over the books and kind of like check on things. And every time, I think sometimes I kind of say this or like I kind of joke, but like every time I'm like, why are we doing this? But then every time there is something that comes up that's like, well, this is why, Jack. But then yet again, every time I still kind of like go back to my construction brain of being like, dude, just go to work, hammer the nails, take your check, go home and don't worry about it. But like I've learned so much by just like trusting in you and in the system of accounting. Like there's a reason why every company follows the same principles of accounting to like balance the books and make sure I still don't get it, but I sit with you and we go over it. And then every time something new comes up, like there was the cost of goods sold, there's been like missing receipts that I've been like, oh my gosh, I need to charge the customer for that. I mean, I've just learned so much. And then also like tracking, what times of year are the busy times, what times
Seeing
of
your
year.
seasonality, right?
Yeah, because like, why go on vacation when you should be at home, making all your money? Like, we're slow in the winter. The winter weather sucks around here, so we just go on vacation in the winter now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why go on summer? Like, summer's when I'm at home, working my longer hours. And also it's great to be in Seattle in the summer. So I don't know. It's kind of crazy to think that sitting down and looking at my accounting has allowed me to see the benefit of going on vacation in the winter.
That's awesome.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just weird, but true, and like still, the next time we're going to sit down for an accounting thing, back of my mind, I'm going to be like, why are we doing this? I could be installing a door. But then something's going to come up and I'm going to be like, boom, that's why I do this. That's why Darren's always, reminding me to, just pay attention to that stuff. Because I know I'm not alone in that. If I didn't have to do any of that, I wouldn't. I would just take my check. I wouldn't worry about it. As long as my bank account wasn't under zero, I'd probably not worry about it. But I know that's just my, the way it's, that's like my labor. I grew up as like a laborer, just kind of like swinging my hammer. And then I just rolled the dice, and the only difference between a laborer who is really good at what they do and a contractor who owns their own company and makes $1 million a year doing the same thing, but it's the bookkeeping and accounting and not wearing a torn up shirt. I mean, it's very simple. It's
Mm-hmm.
any person that looks at me and is like, wow, good for you, you're a young business owner. I'm like, man, I just rolled the dice, I just went for it, and it is
But
the
you deserve a
time.
lot of credit for having invested in your future and investing in making sure that you've got quality accounting, you've got your licensing and taxes sorted out, and you have a mindset that is like, these are things I'm not going to skimp on. In fact, I want to make sure I'm audit proof. I want to make sure that I have everything in the right place so that if they want to come pull apart my books, we're prepared for it, and we can provide the evidence that we've done things legally and correct.
Yeah. I really, there's no way of, or maybe there could be a way of tracking this, but like I wouldn't be surprised if more companies went out of business simply for just the overwhelming bureaucratic side. Again, I don't know a better word for it, but just something happens, you get audited, and then boom, just can't sustain yourself.
You're
So
an excellent success story of why I wanted to do this in the first place, was to work with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs that are starting their own business and want to do it right and are willing to invest in a little bit in the front. And then hopefully you see gains that far surpass, our rates. And then you're positioned for success for years to come. Whereas, you can continue to churn at a level where there's a lot of work, in the meantime. But if you're only just making sure that your bank account doesn't go negative, then you're really not strategizing for how you can be sustainable for the future.
yeah, so this just made me think of just yesterday. I was talking with one of my main competitors. Like, there's so much work. There's no animosity. There are two companies in the area that my door store recommends me and those two other companies. So we're technically in direct competition with each other. But like I said, there's no shortage of work. So but anyway, like he was telling me yesterday about just how stressed he was right now, and not from a lack of work, not because one customer is suing him or something. It's because of his accounting and his bookkeeping. So I was like, oh, I did what you're doing for 2 years. And I finally, luckily, one of my good friends, is an accountant and he helps me. Like, he uses QuickBooks too, but he's telling me about how hard it is for him. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, the QuickBook, you just put stuff in. Like, how is it hard?
Yeah,
And then,
it's one of the more user-friendly, quick accounting interfaces, and that's why I like to recommend it for most people. But it's software, and it does have a learning curve.
but here's the thing: I've got your help. If I ever have an issue, and you've helped me fix QuickBooks countless times too. Remember, like we had one time, they always charge the same tax rate. No matter, like I would put in the zip code, and you fix that for me.
Mm-hmm.
One time they started charging me for something randomly, like remember, like they just signed me up to advertise with them, and you got me out of that because I definitely didn't approve of that.
I do want to circle back on that sales tax conversation for a minute, because that's huge.
Yeah.
Utilizing an accounting software is an important first step for a contractor, because one, you need to track the location of your sales, and that's going to inform where you need to license your business, right? We have that conversation too, where it's like, look, Jack, you should be licensed in Seattle, which you are, because you're doing X dollar amount there, and that exceeds their threshold for needing to be licensed and to perform services in the Seattle area. Same thing in Shoreline. And so we can take a look at, hey, do you want to perform work in Bellingham? I don't know if you service up there, but if you had a sizable project that you needed to take up there, we could look at the licensing requirements and the revenue thresholds. And we need to take a look at, if you had performed any services up there, plus any new additions of jobs, are we going to exceed the threshold that you need to get a license with Bellingham? And then that opens up some reporting requirements for B&O taxes as well. And then that's related to the conversation around sales tax, because QuickBooks at one time you were responsible for manually entering those tax rates. So if you performed a service in Seattle and you're invoicing a customer there, then you have a different tax rate than Shoreline, than Bellingham, than Bellevue.
Yeah.
And if you're responsible for entering all that, then you just got to be on top of it, which required our team to be knowledgeable and to constantly look at quarterly changes in tax rates. Now, QuickBooks, this is what you're paying for when you get that software. It's built in, which is wonderful, and it reduces our stress on that. But it still means when we go to do B&O tax reporting that we got to validate, did those invoices change, or was there a rate? And QuickBooks isn't 100%. So we need to have that conversation sometimes that, like, Jack, are you going to go recoup the sales tax from your client, or is this a hit to the business? If it's immaterial, then we don't need to worry too much about it. But sometimes if sales tax isn't tracked appropriately in your accounting software, it can mean drastic penalties and stuff when you go report to the state.
Yeah, something like that happened when I started my company. Was QuickBooks still in that old software where you had to do each individual sales tax? Okay. Yeah. I remember that because
when we were using desktop first.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it goes back to, again, my lack of accounting, because I wasn't putting customers' addresses in there. I was just putting their name and email, and then you were like,
True.
Jack, I don't know where these people live. How am I supposed to do the sales tax? So then I started doing that, and you were able. Oh, hi.
Hi, Shelby.
Hey, you okay? One second.
Yeah, no worries.
Good morning. Love you. Sorry. So yeah, you had to put in the sales tax, or each individual one. And now, I just put in the zip code of where my customer lives. QuickBooks is like 9.5%, and then I don't have to worry about it. And I mean, I've had people, especially, when I'm working out in like the boonies, they are like, hey, I got a low tax rate and I'm not paying that extra $5 for Seattle's, so
that extra percentage can add up.
Hey, look, here's your tax rate. Okay. I don't figure it out. QuickBooks does it.
Yeah.
And then that colleague who I was talking about. So that's the side of QuickBooks that he doesn't have any help. He's doing all that, that you're saying, you're reconciling and checking it out, making sure, and, things are remedying. Like, I don't have to do any of that. I don't even know what you're talking about, to be honest, right? My colleague, he has to do all that, spend however much time, and then, at best, he saves himself from getting a penalty, but he's not making any money using all that time to spend making sure it's all good, So I told him, I was like, man, you got to get with Darren. Like, you're crazy to be doing all that yourself. And he's like, here's the other quintessential contractor response to that. I'm going to get my wife to help me out with it. Like, okay, good luck. Good luck with that. Have fun with that. Because, like, I just don't get it. Us contractors, we think, and it's probably because back in the day, that was the right way to do it. Like, shit, have your wife do, the bookkeeping, you're out measuring the doors, and then you got your 14-year-old kid installing them, but it's a different world we live in now. And I think contractors are a little bit old school, if you will, and, but I think if, it doesn't make you any less of a contractor or any less of a tough guy to use technology. I think there's kind of this like fear of like, I don't need that. I've done it this way for so long. And also, I know contractors, we're not cheap people, but we don't want to pay for something that we don't need someone else to do. Like I cut my own grass and, blah, blah, blah. But like, I'm not going to do my own accounting.
Mm-hmm. Well,
No.
I think the difference there is, and lots of, family help can help with administrative work and accounting that we do provide in bookkeeping. But if there's an issue and that issue compounds, then there's huge financial implications to that. And so what we want to offer is peace of mind, and then making sure that if you want to poise yourself for growth, which, yeah, we want to support that and make sure that you're doing things sustainably with the correct licensing, taxing, and accounting mindset in place.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also just one last thing about the benefits of accounting and using accounting software. End of the year taxes, end of the quarter taxes, monthly, like everyone's got it different, but I get taxed from the state, from the feds, and then somebody else too takes some money, but I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to make sure I'm not paying it late. QuickBooks does it all. I could never imagine not having QuickBooks and then not having your help navigating it. Because again, I think it's one thing to use QuickBooks, but then it's another thing to have someone who knows what they're doing using QuickBooks. I mean, it's like me trying to make a reel on Instagram. Like the best I can do is like a 10-second thing, no filter, no music. It's just like very simple. And then I look at other people's reels and I'm like, what? How are you?
How did they put that together?
Are you in Hollywood? Like, what is this? But it's just that's where I'm at with technology, and that's okay. I can still make a reel.
Well, Jack, it was great having you on, and I appreciate you kind of sharing a little bit about like your story of getting started. I've loved working with you. Now I've got a small bookkeeping team that helps with your account, and I think we've enjoyed looking at the growth from I think we started in 2019. So you had a couple of years before us, but yeah, from 2019 before the pandemic to now has been awesome to see you eclipse. I remember when we were first talking about your first $1 million client, and you're like, I wonder what year I'm going to hit that. And now you're eclipsing $500,000 in sales, and you're getting to a point where it's like, just the two of you is so sustainable. And, when you're ready to take on that next employee and stuff, we can talk about what it means to grow beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, it's mutual, honestly. Like I appreciate everything that you've done for me, Darren. And, there's things we didn't even talk about in this meeting that you've helped me out with and helped me through. And, yeah, man, thanks for having me on here. And I hope I was, helpful.
Absolutely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love seeing exactly what we're talking about from a contractor's mindset too. And that helps feed back into us being able to provide better service for you and for clients as well.
Yeah. I can't imagine a better time to get into this industry. Like I did a job for a guy 2 weeks ago who's he's a tech guy. He's been working for startups, but he hasn't been with the same company more than 6 months for the last few years, just playing that game. I'm like, man, you should be a contractor. Like you have no experience and you're starting at zero. Go for it. Like, why not? There's so much opportunity. Learn how to do something. And then, like I said, roll the dice, go out and do a good job of it, and you can succeed.
If you niche into a specific area that you can learn and really focus on, right?
Yeah. And like the world is changing. Look at all this, electronic cars, but no Seattle houses have the plug-in for them. Boom. Go into business, just adding, obviously you got to become an electrician, but hey, there's a lot of money. Sparkies get paid a lot of money. So it's Sparkies. Sparkies, we call them. I won't tell you what we call plumbers. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's like I've got a 2-year-old daughter, and my 100% intention is to just coax her into the trades. Like, why would you go to university? No offense to anyone that did, or but it's, in my opinion, no brainer. Go into the trades. You don't have to go to school. You won't have student debt. You can write your own hours. You just have to do good work and be honest. Yeah.
Great.
There's
Well, thanks
my
again,
conclusion
Jack.
statement, I guess.
I love it. No, so great to have you on for the inaugural podcast, and thanks for being a friendly face for my first episode. But
Yeah.
We'll let you get back to work. I appreciate your time here.
All right. Good to see you, Darren. Take it easy.
You too. See you, Jack.